President Yoon on Tuesday night issued a martial law decree after the opposition Democratic Party railroaded a downsized budget bill and filed impeachment motions against the state auditor and the chief prosecutor. The president lifted the order just hours after the parliament passed a motion demanding the lift. And in the aftermath of the martial law declaration, senior aides of President Yoon, including his chief of staff, collectively tendered their resignations this morning. And despite the chaos, stock markets in the country are up and running as usual this morning. Tuesday night's declaration also dragged down the Korean won as low as 1,441 per dollar, hitting the lowest since October 2022. For the first time in nearly 5 decades, emergency martial law has been declared in South Korea in a dramatic showdown between President Yoon and Parliament. Though it took just 6 hours before the order was terminated. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
President Yoon declared an end to martial law at around 4:30 a.m. on Wednesday, lifting the measure he announced just hours before amid what he called attempts to overthrow the country's democratic system.
존경하는 국민 여러분, 저는 어제 밤 11시를 기해 국가의 본질적 기능을 마비시키고 자유민주주의 헌정 질서를 붕괴시키려는 반국가 세력에 맞서 결연한 구국의 의지로 비상계엄을 선포하였습니다. 그러나 조금 전 국회의 계엄 해제 요구가 있어 계엄 사무에 투입된 군을 철수시켰습니다.
Following the announcement, the cabinet passed a motion to lift the martial law 6 hours after the president ordered the decree, citing pro-North Korea forces and opponents of the state paralyzing South Korean democracy.
친애하는 국민 여러분, 저는 북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는 파렴치한 종북 반국가 세력들을 일거에 척결하고 자유 헌정 질서를 지키기 위해 비상계엄을 선포합니다.
In an emergency address to the nation, the South Korean leader said the current opposition-led parliament is incapacitating the functions of government, thereby disregarding the livelihoods of citizens. He noted how the opposition Democratic Party of Korea has filed 22 motions to impeach state officials since its inauguration, and continues to intimidate judges and aims to paralyze the executive branch. Also, referring to the opposition's push to pass a reduced budget bill in Parliament, Yoon said this compromises core state functions, including public safety measures.
예산까지도 오로지 정쟁의 수단으로 이용하는 이러한 민주당의 입법 독재는 예산 탄핵까지도 서슴지 않았습니다. 국정은 마비되고 국민들의 한숨은 늘어나고 있습니다. 이는 자유 대한민국의 헌정 질서를 짓밟고 헌법과 법에 의해 세워진 정당한 국가 기관을 교란시키는 것으로서 내란을 획책하는 명백한 반국가 행위입니다.
He deemed martial law a necessary measure to protect the freedom, safety and sustainability of the nation and to ensure a better future for the next generation. This was followed by the military announcing a set of measures, including the suspension of political gatherings that could stir social confusion, the return of the country's striking medical staff within 48 hours, and the control of media and publications under the martial law command. Under Article 77 of the South Korean Constitution, the president may declare martial law in the event of war, an armed conflict, or a national emergency level situation, with the use of military forces to address military needs or to maintain public order and safety. Martial law can also be lifted through a majority vote in the parliament according to Clause 5. It was the first time in 44 years for martial law to be declared in South Korea. The executive measure has been called 16 times, including 12 instances of emergency martial law in South Korea's modern history. While repealing his initial decree, Yoon urged the Nat'l Assembly to immediately cease its repeated push for impeachments, legislative tricks and budgetary obstructions that paralyze the functions of government. Seong, Arirang News.
And amid the upheaval, the president's office announced Wednesday morning that the chief of staff, Jin-seok, and other senior staff have offered their resignations. The resignations were proposed during a meeting of senior secretaries held by Jeong earlier in the day. Now, President Yoon has not yet accepted their resignations. The president's schedule has also been affected by recent events. President Yoon was supposed to hold a meeting on Wednesday morning to review the country's response to drug-related issues, but that has been postponed. Let's recap on what took place Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Within hours of the unexpected order, members of the National Assembly quickly assembled at the parliament to demand a revocation of the order. Our correspondent Lee Si-hu has more.
The National Assembly in the early hours of Wednesday urgently convened a plenary session and unanimously voted to demand that President Yoon lift the emergency martial law declared just hours before. At around 1 a.m., 190 of the 300 members of the National Assembly were present and all voted in favor of the motion demanding the martial law order be lifted under the Constitution, which states that a majority approval from the parliament can remove martial law.
According to the decisions of the National Assembly, the President must immediately lift the emergency martial law. The martial law order is now void.
Following the meeting at around 2 a.m., National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik sent an official notification of the Parliament's demand to the President and the Defense Ministry. While the National Assembly members from both the rival ruling and opposition blocs reiterated that martial law is indeed void and unconstitutional by procedure.
The National Assembly decision confirms the martial law order void. We, the National Assembly, will regard the constitutional order of the Democratic Republic of South Korea.
We deeply regret this state of affairs. The National Assembly's decision to lift martial law makes the declaration of the law void of practical effect.
They further asked that the members of the military and the police not follow orders that are unconstitutional by procedure, as lawmakers decided to remain at the parliament for the night.
The National Assembly will do all it can to stabilize the current national chaos. We, together with the people, will certainly safeguard the democratic constitutional order.
Meanwhile, there are growing moves, especially from the opposition, to impeach President Yoon and hold him to account. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
So that's what's happened over the past 12 hours. Now we are joined by our Lee Si-hu on the line. Si-hu, the rival parties have been holding emergency meetings throughout this morning. What do we hear from the respective parties?
Right, Dani. Here at the National Assembly, lawmakers have been holding hours of emergency meetings and discussions since early this morning. And I have to note this is occurring across blocs, ruling in opposition and conservative and liberal as they try to decide on their next actions to deal with the situation. Just a minute ago at noon, the main opposition Democratic Party began an official rally to protest the president's move. That is in front of the main hall of the National Assembly, where armed members of the military tried to force their way into the building. The Democratic Party, led by its leader Lee Jae-myung, says it's coming up with a motion to impeach President Yoon today unless he steps down. The party said the president's declaration of martial law does not meet the criteria for one as outlined by the Constitution. It plans to put the motion up for an assembly-wide vote by convening a plenary session tomorrow. Other minor parties, the Rebuilding Korea Party and the Reform Party, are with the DP on this and are planning their own impeachment motions, as well as filing of criminal charges against those responsible.
Right, then let's talk about the ruling party. How is the ruling party reacting to the situation? I mean, what stance are they taking?
Right, so the ruling People Power Party too held hours of meetings and was able to form some sort of consensus and agreement on the need to expel President Yoon from the party for creating a crisis that goes against the spirit of the party. The party chairman Han Dong-un spoke on the need for President Yoon to come out and explain his actions himself. Han has also mentioned the need for the entire cabinet to step down and for the defense minister to be immediately dismissed from the post. But there are reportedly some members of the party, those who are close to President Yoon, who disagree with this opinion. The opposition, of course, says simply expelling Yoon from the party isn't enough for what he has done. Tami?
All right, Ishiyu, do keep us posted. That was our Ishiyu reporting live from the National Assembly. So, military placed on emergency standby and troops trying to breach the main chamber of the National Assembly. This was a night of chaos at the Parliament. Our Kim Bo-kyung has the details.
President Yoon's sudden, unexpected declaration of emergency martial law, the first such declaration since 1979, surprised civilians, leaving them in disbelief.
I'm a bit stunned right now, and honestly, I'm not sure if this is the right thing. It's so unexpected, and I don't really know what to say.
Actually, I don't know what's happening right now. I just my friend asked me what happened in Korea,
Right after President's declaration, the Defense Ministry shifted to contingency mode. Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, who reportedly proposed the president to issue martial law, ordered a meeting of key military commanders and put the military on alert. Air Force units, including fighter jets, were also deployed for surveillance activities and patrol missions. Soon after, General Park An-soo, the Army Chief of Staff, was named the leader of the Martial Law Command, and at 11 p.m. he issued the first martial law proclamation banning all political activities, placing media and publications under the Martial Law Command's control. As lawmakers attempted to gather at the National Assembly complex, troops attempted to breach the building, with helicopters flying overhead at around 11:50 p.m. Armed soldiers attempting to enter the main chamber faced resistance from parliamentary aides who blocked the entrance with desks and chairs and sprayed fire extinguishers. Some soldiers were even spotted breaking windows to get in. The standoff continued until 190 lawmakers from both ruling and the opposition parties unanimously passed a resolution at 1 a.m. to demand the repeal of martial law. Following the passage, the troops began to withdraw and boarded military buses at a parking lot by the Hangang River near the National Assembly, which departed at around 3:30 a.m. The Defense Ministry also withdrew the martial law command at 4 a.m. and canceled the emergency assembly at the ministry. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Then what is this martial law decree? I mean, how serious do things have to be for the country's leader to push for such a drastic move? We're joined by attorney An Jung-sun. Thanks for joining us. So, sir, let's start with the term itself, a martial law declaration. It's a term that we don't hear too often. Walk us through what the martial law order means here in the country.
Yes, under the South Korean Constitution, and President may declare martial law in times of war, armed conflict, or similar national assembly, national emergency. And the question remains here is that what happened last night. And personally, I don't think there's any emergency happened last night. Right? That's the issue. And since 1948, there has been 16 cases of martial law declaration. And the last one was 1979. So the October 26, 1979, and some of you might remember that the date of assassination of, President Park Chung-hee. So that was the, national emergency per se. Yes.
Well, then legally speaking, are there any legal standards or criteria to adhere to for such a call to be issued?
Yes, under the Korean Constitution, and President have full discretion to declare martial decree. But however, there are two procedural requirements under the Korean Constitution. And first one, the President have to notify National Assembly without delay. Without delay means immediately. And but however, what happened was that nobody noticed it. What happened in National Assembly, and they watched the news and. Right, so that was not really the proper notification to the National Assembly.
Right.
And second is that you have the decree has to go through the State Council deliberation process, which we do not know what happened. So we have to find out what happened. So there's some procedural issues about the constitutionality of the decree.
Well, there are growing calls from the political circle, including the leader of Yoon's party, Han Dong-un, saying the country's defense minister, who apparently proposed the idea to the president to be fired. Now, if that proceeds as planned, what legal steps lie ahead for the defense minister then?
Yeah, actually, I was watching live stream of what happened in the National Assembly. I was a little bit surprised to find Han Dong-un there, so because that they're the same party. And according to the press that time, that their People's Party, people about 50 assemblymen was gathered in the big building, not in the National Assembly. And I a little bit surprised to find the Han Dong-un at the National Assembly at that time. So what happened was, I think that could be a serious criminal charge against the defense minister, because that possibly he can charge for the treason under the Korean Criminal Code, which is the maximum sentence is the death penalty, and minimum is about 5 years. So that's a very serious charge, possible charge against him. And my concern is the other problem is that under the Korean Constitution, and then even the president can be prosecuted for the treason charges. So that's a very serious crime, and there's an investigation. We'll have to wait and see what will happen.
Well, what we have to point out at this point is that there are voices that the president himself should be held responsible for the whole drama. What legal action can lawmakers and those who are trying to hold him responsible take at this point then? I mean, what legal options are on the table?
Yes, from the President Yoon's perspective at this moment, I think he has to make a political decision, whether he want to step down voluntarily, or you have to face the impeachment process by National Assembly. That's really very time-consuming, also painful. So we'll have to see how we do it. But from the National Assembly perspective, for the impeachment of president, right, you need to get simple majority to initiate the impeachment process. So simple majority means 51%. That's 151 vote out of 300, and you need the minimum two-thirds or more to approve the motion. So that means that 201 out of 300. So last night the National Assembly, there was 190 vote there, right? So you need only 10 more votes to finish. Finish the impeachment process. That's the very close number.
Are you saying that the impeachment process that we may see in the near future will look something like we saw back in 2017? What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of a deja vu, right? So actually, when I saw it happen was that, like a movie, right? Spring, spring something, I think that's a very serious situation, because that, martial law is not, a joke, right? This is very serious criminal. It's a very serious problem. So I guess that there are a lot of consequences, coming up, right?
Alrighty, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, let's head over to the U.S., where the Biden administration expressed relief, apparently, that President Yoon reversed his order. We have a Voice of America correspondent, Jessica Stone, standing by. Hello there, Jessica.
Good morning.
So, Jessica, how is the White House reacting to the news at the moment?
Well, they are basically confirming that they did not get any heads up on this, no notification in advance to state or to the Pentagon either. But as you say, they do welcome President Yoon's statement that he would rescind the order declaring emergency martial law. And they also reaffirmed their support for the people of Korea and the U.S.-ROK alliance. The National Security Council spokesperson also gave this statement to VOA saying, quote, "The administration is in contact with the ROK government and is monitoring the situation closely as we work to learn more." And of course, that was early on in the reporting that we've been doing here at VOA. And we know now that there has been increased contact between the two governments since that point.
Well, it looks like the declaration was just as surprising to the U.S., but do we have any, evidence or clue as to why the U.S. was not pre-notified?
We still don't have that piece of the puzzle, and I think we'll continue to look for it. But it's also the view of certainly those in our VOA Korea service that a lot of this is a domestic matter, that this is a political situation that President Yoon was taking upon himself to handle. And that to the extent that it impacts allies, we don't have evidence that it has impacted, for example, the U.S. troops. And certainly the U.S. is maintaining it is not at all calling into question the strength of the alliance between the two nations.
Well, at least the good thing is that the Pentagon is saying that there's no change in the defense posture in terms of U.S. troops stationed here in South Korea. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, no curfew for the troops, no movement of those troops, according to the Pentagon spokesperson. He also says that there has been contact between the two militaries And I would expect that when we wake up here in the United States in the morning, we'll have additional reporting about the conversations that have taken place. You know, there's so many relationships between diplomats at the military level, at the National Security Council level between these two nations. They've been working so much more closely together along with Japan, particularly on issues surrounding Taiwan and combating China, as well as what's going on in the South China Sea. They also, at the Pentagon, did give us this piece of information that they have, quote, no indication that North Korea is trying to take advantage of the situation. So I know that's a main concern of those of you on the peninsula, so I just want to pass that along as well.
Right. But still, the U.S. is not taking things lightly. It's now issuing safety precautions to U.S. citizens here in South Korea, isn't it?
That's true, and they are telling people to be careful about where they go and to actually avoid sending their kids to schools. I believe on December 4th, and they will be limiting the activity at the embassy and at the consulate there in South Korea. I believe we have a statement with them, which I'm just pulling up here. From the embassy, which says that December 4th, the U.S. Embassy will cancel routine consular appointments for U.S. citizens and visa applicants, and that U.S. Embassy employees should telework. So they're really limiting the traffic in and out of the embassy just in the event or the occasion that U.S. citizens would potentially make themselves targets. And as I said earlier, limiting in-person school attendance of U.S. Embassy children. So that guidance going out just in the last couple of hours to U.S. citizens working and living in South Korea.
Jessica, before I let you go, any word or comment from the incoming President-elect Donald Trump?
Not yet. We haven't heard from him, which, this new iteration of incoming President Trump is a little more circumspect than the round one. We don't always hear from him right away, and certainly he's not the sitting president, so it wouldn't be appropriate to hear from him. But remember, a lot of the people he's placed around him and reappointed to be around him were closely involved in the negotiations, particularly with North Korea and with the rapprochement that was taking place under the first Trump administration. So these are not people that are new to the peninsula politics, and certainly we may well hear from them certainly about their thoughts on this during the confirmation hearings in the coming weeks.
Alrighty, Jessica, thanks so much for connecting with us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
Now, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, Kim Myung-soo, is urging key military commanders to maintain a firm readiness posture to prevent North Korea from making a misjudgment following the lifting of martial law. These remarks came from an emergency meeting of key commanders on Wednesday morning. South Korea's top general ordered the military to focus on its primary duty to protect the public safety and monitor border operations against the regime. He also reportedly called the U.S. Forces Korea commander, that is General Paul Lecamera, and said the JCS is carrying out operations as usual and maintaining full readiness against potential North Korean provocations. Financial and foreign exchange markets also reacted to President Yoon's martial law order, with fluctuations in Korean stocks and currency. Our Lee Soo-jin explains.
South Korean President Yoon-seok's unexpected declaration of martial law, followed by its swift reversal, has led to volatility in both domestic and global stock markets, as well as the Korean currency. The surprise late-night announcement on Tuesday led the benchmark Kospi to open down 1.97% at 2,450, and the tech-heavy Kosdaq to open 1.91% down at 677. This comes after the Korean exchange, following a review of market conditions, decided to open the market on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. as usual. In global markets, U.S. traded shares of Korean companies initially plunged before regaining ground after martial law was lifted. E-commerce platform Coupang fell as much as 9.8% on the New York Stock Exchange following the martial law declaration, before recovering partially after martial law was lifted. Steelmaker POSCO Holdings saw a drop in the 4% range, and shares of KB Financial Group, LG Display, and KEPCO also fell sharply. But it wasn't just Korean stocks that experienced volatility, as the Korean won weakened to 1,442 won per dollar, its weakest level since October 2022. And while the currency recovered to the 1,410 range against the dollar after the martial law was lifted, it remains relatively weak as it stayed in that range when it opened at 1,418 on Wednesday. In response, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok during emergency meetings held with top economic officials late Tuesday night and on Wednesday morning vowed to supply unlimited liquidity to stabilize financial and foreign exchange markets. The officials also pledged to carry out pan-governmental efforts to monitor the finance market in real time. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's jang-making, or the tradition of making fermented soybean sauces, has been added to UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage list. With the latest inscription, jang-making joins 22 other Korean cultural practices and sites on the UNESCO list. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The 19th session of the Intergovernmental Committee for UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage is currently underway in Paraguay. It is there that Korea's tradition of jang-making, or the making of fermented sauces using soybeans, has been added to the UN body's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. The inscription, which honors the long, rich cultural practice, was widely anticipated following a recommendation from the committee's deliberative body last month. According to the committee, the communal act of jang-making generates a sense of peace and belonging for the communities concerned. Jang-making has been around for centuries, dating as far back as the Three Kingdoms period from 57 BC to 668 AD. It was also during the Joseon dynasty that the practice of jang-making was so highly valued that royal storerooms were created specially for the fermented sauces and managed by court ladies. Some of the different varieties of jang include doenjang, or soybean paste, ganjang, or soy sauce, and gochujang, or red pepper paste. Jang-making is a Korean tradition that's often passed down through generations with the household's own recipe. The practice was first designated as a national intangible heritage in 2018 and now joins the UNESCO list as the 23rd Korean cultural practice or site. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The 2024 Paris Olympic silver medalist and South Korean air pistol shooter who went viral this past summer has been listed as one of the BBC's 100 most influential and inspirational women of 2024. That is Kim Hye-ji, who went viral over the summer due to footage of her in a charismatic pose at previous competitions, and she was added to the annual list on Tuesday. Announcing the list under the theme Resilience, the BBC said Kim's charisma and sporting achievements brought her to the world's attention this year. Also included in the list was Park Soo-bin, founder of Chair Crusher Club, a project on wheelchair accessibility.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The conflict in Ukraine is continuing to escalate, with significant developments occurring both on the battlefield and in international diplomacy. President Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday called for increased offensives in eastern Ukraine in response to substantial Russian advances in Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia. Ukrainian troops have withdrawn from several villages, and Zelensky has emphasized the urgent need for additional Western-supplied weaponry to counter the Russian offensives. On the same day, the United States announced a new military aid package worth $725 million, which includes rockets, landmines, and counter-drone systems. During German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's visit to Kyiv on Monday, Zelensky reiterated the need for more weapons and stronger diplomatic backing in order to achieve a just peace with Russia. Scholz reaffirmed Germany's strong support for Ukraine and encouraged continued diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. Ahead of the upcoming NATO ministerial meeting, Ukraine's diplomacy chief Andriy Sybiha urged NATO partners to provide at least 20 air defense systems to help protect against Russian aerial attacks. Ukraine has also conducted tests on new homemade missiles and is increasing missile production. Concerns have been raised about the potential collapse of the ceasefire agreement after exchanges of fire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Lebanon-based militant group fired 2 mortars at an Israeli army base on Monday, saying it was a response to repeated violations of the ceasefire by Israel. Israel responded with airstrikes targeting southern Lebanon, marking its largest wave of attacks since last week's ceasefire was announced. According to Lebanon's health ministry, at least 11 people were killed in the strike. The IDF said operations in southern Lebanon aimed to address actions by Hezbollah that threatened Israeli civilians and violated mutual agreements, while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the ceasefire would continue to be enforced with an iron fist. U.S. President Joe Biden made a historic visit to Angola on Monday, becoming the first sitting American president to travel to the country. During his visit, Biden met with Angolan President João Lourenço to discuss economic and security partnerships and emphasized Angola's importance as a key U.S. ally in the region. Biden announced $3 billion of investment in the Lobito Corridor Railway project, connecting Angola, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo to facilitate the export of minerals such as cobalt and copper. The initiative is viewed as a strategic effort to counter China's economic influence in Africa. Biden also visited the National Slavery Museum, where he paid tribute to the millions of Angolans who were forcibly taken during the transatlantic slave trade. He also announced a $229,000 grant to support the museum's restoration. Europe's most expensive Christmas tree was unveiled in Munich on Tuesday with an almost 3-meter gold tree made of 2024 Vienna Philharmonic coins worth over $5.4 million. The coins are manually arranged on a specially designed frame with a gold Vienna Philharmonic coin weighing approximately 570 grams, serving as the star on top. The coins showcase an image of a pipe organ located in the Golden Hall of the Vienna Musikverein on one side, with a selection of classical music instruments featured on the other. Although the tree itself is not for sale, the individual coins are available for purchase. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
That's all we have for now. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time with more on the martial law declaration. Thanks for watching.